care in between. Physics, art, and math guide us down this path. Historical tales come alive, where science and stories dive. Blended facts with heart, knowledge from the start. Need rich blues we sing to the future memory. Health and science in the mix. Maybrick's got the fix. Complex subjects made
right
clear.
now
Every episode
in ways that we actually acquire knowledge
leads the way.
and ways that make me more efficient.
In the world of digital streams, turning knowledge into dreams. Through the tales of old, new stories unfold.
Thank you so much for joining with me. It is truly an honor and a privilege.
MedBix Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming.
Hey, welcome to the MedBreaks Webcast. This is Raman Annamaraju. I'm the host. I have a new addition to the MedBreaks. Her name is, I tell you, she's a better looking, better talking, and she's a doctor of nursing practice, DNP. She is Dr. Susan Davis is joining as a co-host. She's a very welcome. She is very interesting background she has. While she's not saving lives, she saves lives, rescue. She's a founder of a Rescue RN. Rescue RN she's a founder. While she's not saving lives, she raises cattle. So, who doesn't want her to be co-host? Welcome to the MedBix Webcast, Susan. Welcome to the, welcome.
Thank you, Ramana. What a fun pleasure. I'm thrilled to be here and what a great night. Thank you for having me.
You survived 3 hurricanes and lost home and built back it, So you have all the best things in the world you have it behind you, It's really you did everything. You're a great survivor.
The season is young here in Florida, so we'll hold our breath on that one.
Okay, yeah. So let me introduce our guest and just let me talk about a little bit about the background a little bit. Healthcare is in crisis. Everybody knows about that. I don't have to, I don't know why I'm not getting she's not there. Okay. So healthcare is a kind of in crisis because we are in a big, doctors are not happy, patients are not happy, rural hospitals are closing. So when there is a crisis, what we do as humans, we look at the past, we look at the sages, teachers with the wisdom and gurus. People we have such a guru, we have such a teacher we have with a full of wisdom. He's a Nostradamus, I call him. He can see clearly the future of the healthcare. And I learned so much from him. He is a crisp writing. He is one of the pioneers in healthcare. Dr. Robert Pearl he is a plastic surgeon, and he is studied in Yale, Stanford, so qualifications, out of this world. And then he became the former CEO of Kaiser Permanente, the largest physician healthcare group. After that, he retired now. But now he he authored several books. I met him actually one of the book ceremony in the Commonwealth Club, 7 years ago, I think. So I met him before the pandemic. So now there is so much changes. We have a new player, AI, in the game. So Dr. Robert Pearl authored a book called ChatGPT. So let me bring him to the table and let me
ChatGPT MD.
MD, yes. Dr. Pearl, welcome to the bed. Oh, just a minute, 1 second. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the MedBix Webcast. Thank you for coming back. You are coming a couple of times. You are on my podcast. Honored to have you.
Thanks, Romana, for having me, and welcome Susan to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
I
you,
have a
Dr.
question
Pearl.
for you. I introduced you everything, but I have a question for you. We have a After the last time I spoke with you, there is a big changes came in artificial intelligence progressing enormous speeds, is accelerating in a positive direction. But there is something crisis going on. The crisis is Gen Z generation and millennials are leaving the doctors in droves, and they're going to rescue to the LLMs, large language models, or ChatGPT or Google. They're going to these kind of things. What is going to happen to the doctors? That is a crisis. What is going to happen to the doctors? If you can help us.
Well, first of all, let me just tell listeners and viewers that all the profits from my book, ChatGPT MD, How AI-Empowered Patients and Doctors Can Take Back Control of American Medicine, all the profits go to Doctors Without Borders, a great charity that we all should be supporting right now, particularly around the globe. So the question you're really posing is that, as has happened for millennia, you have evolutions and generations. You have your baby boomers, you have your Gen X, but then you have the millennials and the Gen Z. And these individuals, by the way, it's 40% of the population, they've grown up expecting to get information from other sources besides from doctors or nurses, from getting it from standard textbooks. They want to be able to get the information quickly, social media, on their phone, and they trust a lot of people who are there, particularly now when you have a tool called ChatGPT. And by the way, I use ChatGPT just as shorthand. It's really any large language model. It could be Google, it could be Gemini. I have no relationship. Sorry, it could be Claude, it could be Gemini. I have no relationship with any of these companies. I just liked all the letters flowing after each other. So I think that we're going to have to evolve to provide care to them in a different type of way than we have before. But I also believe that what will happen across time is that the other generations will come along, because a generative AI tool not only provides information, it provides expertise. You know, you go to Google, Dr. Google, and you put some information in place, and you get a lot of links. Doesn't necessarily mean they apply to you. You can't be sure what's accurate or not. When you finish, you still need the clinician to be able to interpret it for you. But with a generative AI tool, it's very specific. And because you put all your information in place, it's about you. It's personalized. It's about one person. And that is remarkable. It's never happened before in terms of the patient in the history of medicine.
We have another crisis. I want to talk with you about that. Is the health, the iron triangle? You talk about frequently about the iron triangle. Health, access, and cost is unbreakable. Either one of them we can solve, the other one always going up. So how do you healthcare system, how do you solve that problem of this? American system, healthcare system is a paradox, cost going up and access going down. It doesn't make any sense. So what do you think of this iron triangle? How do you break it? And you think the AI can play the role, is some role in this area, you think?
It's no longer an iron triangle. Generative AI can break it, and if we use it well, it will break it. Let's just take one aspect of what it can do, which is the management of chronic diseases. We're talking about diabetes and hypertension and asthma and heart failure. And what we know is that if every patient with chronic disease had it as well controlled as we're able to do through the best organizations today, we'd have 30 to 50% less heart attacks, strokes, cancers, and kidney failures. Now think about that. What would medicine be like with 30 to 50% fewer heart attacks, strokes, cancers, and kidney failures? The estimates are it would reduce cost by $1.5 trillion. Now, all of a sudden, I call that higher quality. The access can now improve because you've now created 30 to 50% more capacity and costs have come down. We have to get this notion of the iron triangle out of our minds in this era of generative AI.
Susan, do you want to follow up some questions on that one?
Well, I wasn't privy to the original triangle conversation. So, I'm summarizing and skipping ahead like Dr. Pearl just described. And first of all, I'm in complete agreement with, smashing that triangle and moving forward, because what are our options anyway? So I love the prediction, and it's not even a prediction. We're here. Right, Dr. Pearl? I mean, we're here.
Let's take an example. You're a nurse, doctor too, but a nurse as well, probably before you became a doctor of nursing. And, you take care of a patient with hypertension. So what do we do in the medical profession today? Patient comes in, sees a clinician, we diagnose hypertension, we start a medication. And what do we say? Come back in 3 to 4 months.
And add another, and then
it's elevated. What do we call that? White coat syndrome, right?
Yeah.
So now we're already 6 months, 9 months in the hypertension, which, by the way, accounts for 40% of strokes, which but the listeners and viewers may not. It's not controlled. Now let's take a generative AI tool. What we know is that you can have mobile blood pressure cuffs the patient can have, transmits information using Bluetooth. It now would go to a generative AI tool, and over the course of a month, 3 times a day, it would take the blood pressure. It could graph whether it's improving or going down. And after 30 days, we know, is the medication working? If it's not working, we need to either change the medication, change the dose, do something different. And now all of a sudden, hypertension becomes controlled. And now 40% of strokes disappear. That's a pretty good win-win-win. Higher quality, better access, because the patient's not sitting in the hospital or the ICU with a stroke, and dramatically lower costs, because we're talking about literally pennies for some of these medications, maybe low single dose, single numbers in dollars. And we know generative AI tools essentially are free if you want them, where you can pay $20 a month. 3 lattes a month at Starbucks will get you access to the totality of medical information and the expertise that's required. Now you got to work with a clinician. This is not doing it totally by yourself. And whether that's going to be a nurse practitioner, whether that's going to be a physician, someone is going to have to get you the different medicines and make the changes. But now you don't have to see the person. You can do it on a text message. You can do it on an email. You can do it on a telemedicine phone call. We've taken
Dr. Pearl, but what you're saying is happening now, and it's miraculous, and I'm on board and I'm on your team, and let's go. However, I'm going to go ahead and speak to like my own family. I mean, they have me to live with, and they're not adapters, right? I'm an early adopter, but they're not. And so I'm wondering about access, not just rural access, but people who are not, they're butting the system here right now. They're thinking this AI thing is scary. It's horrible, much less their healthcare. I mean, they barely trust their provider, much less this AI machine. But to your point, it's miraculous to me of what we can do to fill these gaps. Where right now, you first visit, second visit, third visit with our different hypertension medications, but like I can't get my mom to even barely listen to me about how wonderful this AI can help her. So, to your point, how are we going to get this to the people who are not listening to how amazing this is?
So your mom couldn't get your grandma to try an ATM. And you can go down the entire line. I don't know if, your kids could get you to get an iPhone or whatever. I don't know how old they are. But this is the nature of technology. There's always the early adopters. What I'm telling people right now, both clinicians and patients, it's experiment. Don't trust it. Just play with it. It's fun. Ask it questions. Pretend it's an expert. You can use the voice feature that's simple to use. You don't even need to know how to type. And just put the information in place. If someone your mom has a pain in her hip and is going to go see the clinician, put all the information in place and see what it provides. I was on a podcast a while ago, and the host at the end of the visit, who had never used it for medicine, said to me, my husband fell skiing. He slipped 100 feet. His arm was over his head. His shoulder still hurts. It's 3 months later. You're a skier, Dr. Pearl. You're a doctor. What's going on? And I said, I'll tell you what. You said you never used it. So why don't you do the following? Put all the information in place at the generative AI, see what it says, and then give me a call back. 5 days later, she calls and she says, thank you so much. It said he probably had a rotator cuff tear. It said he needed an MRI to establish a diagnosis, and he should see an orthopedic surgeon because he almost definitely needed surgery. Now compare that to Dr. Google or whatever else your mom likes to read to figure it out. And of course, went to the surgeon, says probably a rotator cuff tear, but now they knew exactly what the rotator cuff was. As you know, a very complex mechanism in the shoulder. Number two, when he said he needed to get an MRI, he said, yeah, bring it on because we need that. And after surgery, he said, if you had waited 3 more months, I probably could not have reattached the tendon because the muscle would have shrunk. That is expertise. Once you have one of those experiences, you never doubt technology again.
I totally agree.
Bring her over and get her to do it, and then let me know what. How's that, Susan?
Yeah, but you called it because that's the one thing. You have to get them off of Dr. Google and onto Dr. ChatGPT at least once and let them use their microphone. And then they're, because what comes back is truly miraculous. It truly is. So to your point, I agree.
Yeah. Along those lines, actually, I wanted to do 30,000 feet question for you. In Texas, I used to live in Texas part-time, at least, that in Houston, you go there, anybody's house, in the basement, they have every gun in the planet, with the guns and bazookas and everything. They think that government, some agency is going to come and take over them. In the same time, in the same place, now they're building a $10 billion data center by Oracle and ChatGPT, OpenAI. They're building the $10 billion center, huge. This creates a lot of unsettling things for a lot of people, including the educated people. Where is this intelligence, centralized intelligence, control that? Tell us a little bit about that, Dr. Pearl. What do you think about that?
Well, I think what you're describing is the technology, which is, by the way, it's 2 years old. In fact, it's not even 2 years old. It will be 2 years old until November the 30th. So we're talking about a technology that's less than 2 years. It is energy and water intensive, and the sites to be able to run it are being built because people are anticipating the growth that's going to be sitting in place. What you see with every technology is that each year it becomes more efficient. Each year the tools are able to be redesigned in ways that require fewer chips, less energy, less water sitting in place. But I think it's really a red herring, if you want to use a very old term, because this is going to happen, whether medicine likes it or not. This is a tool that is so powerful in terms of being able to propel businesses. We shouldn't even be asking, should it happen or not should it happen? It is going to happen. Now, the question is, knowing it's going to happen, are we going to jump on board and lead the way? Or are we as clinicians going to cede that space to someone else? Because I'll guarantee you, they're not going to use it on behalf of either the patient or the clinician, be they a physician or a nurse.
So, Dr. Perel, what can you tell me? What are the 2 examples you can see? Specific examples where the doctors or the offices, like even including nurses, like Susan, can use at this time. You mentioned about the putting all the data and ask questions, but are there any in the facility side, the doctor's offices, they can use anything like that? Do you think any use at this time, immediate use?
Well, there's no question that doctors can use it. I was just talking to a surgeon 2 weeks ago. She had done what's called a microtia repair, a child born without an ear. And when you do that repair, we take out 3 ribs in order to carve and rebuild the ear. At the end of the surgery, we get a chest x-ray because the ribs sit right over the lungs. And if you tear the lining around the lung, called the pleura, you get what's called a pneumothorax. And the x-ray is taken. Now, remember, surgeons are not radiologists, so they do the best they can to interpret it. But she said anyway, she said, let me just get ChatGPT's opinion. And it created a report that was identical to what the radiologist reported 12 hours later. So the answer is absolutely, it can be done. But I want to go, I love having Susan on the show, bringing some nursing things in place. So I want to talk about a hospital that Susan knows well, not a specific hospital in general. So when you admit a patient to the hospital, you can put them in the ICU because they're really sick, or you can put them on the floor because they're not very sick, or you can put them in this intermediate space called telemedicine, telemetry. This basically takes all those monitors that are at the bedside of the patient, puts it on a large screen, and a nurse sits there for 8 hours in a row looking for a problem. Well, number one, it's expensive. But more importantly, it's a lot of patients who don't get monitored. Now we shift it around. We take a generative AI tool and we attach it to those same monitors, and we can now monitor the patient. Nurse comes by at 8 a.m., you're doing okay. Comes by at noon, you're in big trouble. Probably at 9 or 10, there was something there. And now all of a sudden, instead of the nurse doing the usual rounds everywhere, he or she knows exactly who's in the biggest trouble. That is the kind of opportunity. What this technology does is it fills in the spaces between the nurse coming at 8 a.m. and noon, the space between the doctor seeing you in the office and seeing you back in 4 months. The therapist, a therapist sees you and they're a little worried, you're a little depressed. They don't think you're suicidal, but that's the greatest fear that every therapist has. And they see you again in a week or two. What happens in that space? We have no idea. This technology allows all of that to happen. And as I say, it does it at a reasonable cost, and we can implement it quickly. Remember, before we had generative AI, we had what's called narrow AI. These were tools trained on large databases. They're called narrow because they had a single problem. Very expensive, by the way, to create. The tools that I'm talking about, we could create very fast because we actually don't need the tool. We need the training tool to teach the patient how to use it. I believe this is going to be a major part of nursing in the future. That part
100%.
of the job, in the same way that nurses today teach you how to, take care of your health and lower your blood lipids, etc. They're going to teach you not necessarily that information, but how to use a generative AI tool to accomplish it. That is how I see a transformation and revolution in medicine.
And I'm on that team 100%. So I'm just going to comment briefly on your commentary on recognition. Of course, so now you're talking my talk, right? Because recognition is recognize the problem, call for help, and act. These are three things. What failure to rescue, it's a huge problem in the United States and globally, failure to rescue, especially in a hospital setting, because they can't be everywhere. We all know what space staffing is and ratios of nurse to patient is, and we no need to get into that, can of worms. Yeah. But to your point, in that little room, I always call the little guy in the room down the hallway, it's not necessarily a nurse. It's a tech, it's an EMT, it's a paramedic. They're watching 15 screens of cardiac rhythms. And often we get a cold blue in the hospital based on, the patient's leads are off, or they're transferring the patient and we're calling a code blue because of what's being read. All right. So a ridiculous waste of time, energy, and resources, just that teeny little example. So in recognition alone, I'm on board, but let's even go a step further into the preventative area. Like you were saying, I mean, getting further before, let's talk to these people before, let's fill that gap before they get into our hospitals, where this can kick in and help them with their own recognition in that gap. But in the hospital, I'm on board with recognize the problem, call for help, and act. So the interpretation in the support for nursing is huge. And in the nursing conversation, no one wants a robot to be called a nurse. No one wants AI to be called a nurse. Well, they're not a human. We're the humans, but we are looking for that support. And I'm on that team.
Yeah, let me go beyond that. Again, both of you know very well patients with heart failure. And so now we take care of someone in the hospital. They have heart failure. We drain the fluid off. We give them some medications to get the heart to pump a little harder, and they go home. Now, what we know at home is that they're likely to come back and be readmitted we'll go to the ER, then go be readmitted to the hospital. We know that it's usually a couple of days of increasing symptoms. They can't lie flat. They can't climb stairs as well. Their ankles swell. How about a monitor at home, looking at them, and at the first sign of it going south, we use a telemedicine to a nurse in a center who can now evaluate the patient, and we can change that medication before they have the crisis. You see, this artificial notion of what's an office and what's a hospital and what's a home, this is going to change once you have this assistant. We'll call it an assistant, whatever you want to call it to be. This is someone who's there because you can't do it 24/7. But if you have 100 patients you're following as an outpatient, there may only be 5 that you're worried about, and only 2 get into trouble. You don't have to take care of 100 patients. You got to take care of 2 or 3 or maybe 5. And that becomes a task that we can do. Very different than today. We're going to have to shift, by the way, how we pay clinicians. So we're going to have to not pay on a pay for volume basis, because we're going to decrease the volume. We want to pay on a pay for value, a capitated basis, a single payment to a group of clinicians to take care of patients. And the healthier they keep them, the more we align those incentives, then the better they do, to say nothing about how much better the patient does. I've never met a patient ever who wants to have a heart attack and have it reversed. If you can find me that person, I want to know who they are. They don't want it, and we can help them avoid it.
100%. To your point, I always say, cardiac arrest doesn't care who you are or where you are. Thank you.
Dr. Pearl, I spoke with one of the mathematicians last week, actually. Her name is Dr. Diana Thomas. She is a prolific researcher in the AI. She introduced a new metric. It's called a body round index in the place of BMI, body mass index. She's doing this body round index. She told me a very interesting thing in the AI thing. She has a thyroid problem, and then she asked for some kind of a recipe from the AI. They gave the recipe, AI gave the recipe, but she didn't like it. That doctor gave the recipe first, actually. She didn't like it. So she went to the AI. Can you give me, I like Indian food, I like a Mediterranean food, and I like Roman noodles, and all those. Can you give me diversified meal structure for me? And then AI gave a wonderful, really perfect for thyroid problem. It gave. That is one thing I see strikingly, immediately, patients can see the benefit right there, right? What do you think of?
I do that every Sunday. Every Sunday, I go to generative AI. If that weekend I've eaten a little bit extra, I say, well, this week make the calories a little bit less. If this week I particularly want Italian food or sushi, so I'll tell it all the things that I want. I'll give it the budget that I have, and it not only will give me menus for every day, it also will give me a shopping list that I can basically just follow. If I'm very healthy, but if I had diabetes, I could put that in there, and they would modify it. If I had heart failure, I could put that in there, and it would modify it. It personalizes it. This is generative AI. Google is not personal. Even WebMD is not personal. This is personal. I tell it exactly who I am, and the recommendation it gives me is different than it gave anyone else, most likely, in history.
That brilliant. I interviewed Dr. Ken Nipple. He said that what he said that was interesting. The patients are coming with 60 pages of all the notes, and then he gave it to the AI. There is a company in San Francisco, right here, close by. Evidently, it's called Evidently. It takes and put in one paragraph, all the summarized. That was so easy for him. That really see the benefit. Do you think that is the first one, the summarizing these huge chronic problems people have, all those things? And then how do we stop in general the chronic diseases, impending crisis we have in the world, the chronic diseases? Tell us a little bit about AI and then influence in this kind of at the doctor's office. And then
you well know, both of you know, by the time someone has a long hospitalization, the record is about 2,000 pages. And now you got to write a discharge summary or a transfer summary. And it will write it for you. It will write it in perfect medical language. It will have pulled all the information out of place. You still got to read it. You still got to make sure it's accurate. But what otherwise would have been 2 hours of your time now becomes 20 minutes of time. I think that a lot of the nursing notes, I don't know how much time nurses spend writing notes. It's probably a lot of time on a given shift that they can be taking care of patients. The AI can do that because the nurse is going to be entering data all along. It can pull that out. It can add laboratory data. By the way, it can include conversations when the family came by. It can include the information that the specialist had at 6 o'clock on rounds. It can have all that information constantly updated. It's at the time, it has to be done at 3 o'clock, because at 3 o'clock, one human being is leaving and one human being is coming in. So that's an important time. But instead of spending a lot of time providing a update, the person coming in can read it, can ask questions, can dive deeper. Tell me more about Mr. Jones. I'm a little worried about this sitting in whatever room it's going to be, because now you've taken care of what right now fills a huge amount of the hour or whatever the giving the report's going to be. And now you can ask the more important questions. Just like if you know once you know what that rotator cuff is, and you know about the MRI, now you can ask the really interesting questions about, okay, post-operatively, what's my pain going to be like? What can I do? How can I prepare? What should I buy in advance? Those conversations never happen because the doctor only has 17 minutes. Once you can move along that process to a more expert level, the way two clinicians might talk to each other with different levels of expertise in different areas, that's where I think we can now advance the outcome. And one of the other points to me that it's grabbed my attention: 400,000 Americans die every year from misdiagnoses. Now, why do misdiagnoses happen? I'm sure sometimes it happens because the clinician doesn't know enough. But I'm going to bet that most of the time it happens because the clinician doesn't have enough time. We know that doctors interrupt the patient after 11 seconds. The history has a lot of information. The doctor's too rushed to sit there and listen for 5 minutes. But now if the patient is coming in with the background, we create that time. I think it's going to increase fulfillment and reduce burnout. Why do doctors and nurses burn out? Because at the end of the day, they want to go home feeling they did the best they absolutely could. And if the whole day they had to rush and cut corners, they don't go home feeling great. This creates the most precious entity in medicine today, which to me is time.
Go ahead, Susan.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, I mean, that's a lot to digest, but I can tell you I was at a hackathon just this weekend and I was super impressed. It was a hard tech and soft tech hackathon. They were all engineers, types of engineers I'd never even heard of. And they were creating these amazing things. But one of them stands out to just made me think of what you were speaking of, Dr. Pearl. And that was, traditionally it's been the doctors who have been sitting in their little booths, dictating after every patient encounter, and you sit, you dictate, you sit, dictate. Not nurses. We have all of our patients and they're after dictating or typing. But now there's a dictation device, an AI-driven dictation device for nursing. And right here in Florida, on the East Coast of Florida, they're using it in the ERs right now. And the team that I witnessed in this hackathon was creating a better device for clearer, non-garbled nursing dictation. I was like, oh, winner. I don't care what everyone else is talking about. I'm down with the nursing dictation. The amount of time that we do before, during, and after. And frankly, let's circle back just a brief second to that, recognizing the problem in deterioration. We have a lot of early warning devices that are in place for us to use, but they're only as good as they're used in a timely manner. So if we're dictating / charting post facto, well, guess what? It's not going to help us catch anything. So here we go. Just a teeny little, case use, and thank you for it. But yeah, I mean, very cool. I'm about it.
I mean, Romana knows all about this. He's probably had people on the show before doing ambient AI for doctors taking basically completing electronic health record. Doctor used to sit in front of a computer screen, never looking at the patient. Now the ambient AI can listen in and be able to record all that information. What people may not remember is if you go back 3 to 5 years ago, I probably got called by a dozen companies. They said, oh, we got a great AI tool that can listen to the doctor and save 2 to 3 hours a day. The problem is no one's buying it. And you know what I said to them? Your tool doesn't save 2 to 3 hours a day. Because if it did, your biggest problem would be managing the line out your door. Your tool is not able to do what it says it can do. Now we have 70 companies that actually can accomplish it because generative AI is perfect for that. It can exactly understand language, predict what's going to happen, put it into a logical context, completely different than these narrow AI tools of the past. It's the same thing for nurses. It's going to be the same thing, by the way, as I say, in the room with the families. I had a patient I get a lot of things from individuals, by the way, use generative AI to make diagnoses that clinicians had missed. They couldn't figure out.
Yes.
But I also got one from a patient who said, basically, I turned my generative AI on in the morning. And when the doctor came in, it listened in. When the doctor talked to my dad, it was able to synthesize all that, create a summary for us, help us understand what was going on. And the nurse came by and do the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is the opportunity. And again, I'll say the same thing I said before. It doesn't just give you information, it gives you expertise. You actually understand it all. You don't come in with 60 pages of Google that is basically unintelligible without having all the articles and links. You come in with a good summary. And if you want, you can ask it to create some references and it will do that for you as well. This is a total transformation. And I'm not worried about the technology. I worry about the humans because I'm just afraid we're going to be so resistant and hesitant that we're going to miss that opportunity. And as I say, someone else will seize the day for us and we will regret that forever.
You snooze and lose in this case. I mean, we listen. We have to just be a little bit on the regulatory, the HIPAA. One of the things that came up in the hackathon, they're like, "Wait a minute, isn't the speaker better in your phone?" Right? They're like, "Well, we could use the phone. You know, these are the engineers. Like, we could use the phone." I'm like, "No, you can't. Not in a healthcare system. There's lots of safety. There's lots of HIPAA. There's lots of rules, and I think AI is moving so fast and it's so good, but policy." You know, it comes way after something happened. And we know how policy works to what's like the reality and so on and so forth. So I think there's a cautionary measure to the usage, especially in a healthcare setting, on how does our policy, rules, regs, and all the 911 follow this beautiful thing.
Dr. Pearl, when I met you when you were the book Mistreated, you did that one of the books that you in Commonwealth Club. One of the things that when you spoke about it, one thing that stuck with me for lifelong is brain, heart, spine. He said that is three things are the essential for the healthcare to survive, healthcare system to survive. We have a brain now. We have AI with a tremendous expertise brain. We acquired that. That's a good, you know, no problem. Your heart, he did the Doctors Without Borders. He went to Panama or some of the countries in the Chile, South America. He did a cleft surgeries, right? So he provided a heart compassion there. But the last one, that is the spine. That is where my problem is. Where are these leaders? Spine means courageous leaders. You know, you and I see Susan, but we have too many. That is a big thing, missing leadership. Tell us a little bit about that leadership in the AI world, on the healthcare world, and overall the policy wise.
Well, you know, again, for Susan's background, you know, in the book I was writing about the fact that leaders have to have the intelligence of the brain, the empathy and emotional connection of the heart, and the strength and courage of the spine. So that's the three parts that leaders have to have. I think it's become dormant. I think it exists. You know, becoming a physician is 10 years, you know, and it's not 10 easy years. It's 10 years of 80 hours a week or something like that during training. You give up so much. You have that ability. You obviously have the intelligence, and you go into medicine for your heart because you want to care for people and take care of people. So I don't worry that it's not there. I just think that what's happened is that doctors, they were made to run faster because the resources kept dropping. We've actually, in a inflation-driven kind of way, we've watched the average clinician's income drop by 44%. You got to run an office. You start cutting back on your staff. Soon you don't turn the lights on because you don't have electricity. I mean, it's really problematic. We never had the tool to make the advance. And what I'm hoping for is that there'll be people, and all you have to do is get about 30% of people to get over the hump, and then everyone else follows along, who will try this, who will be willing to take a capitated payment, who will be willing to trust their patients. Now, they're not going to do it because I say so. They're not going to do it because, you know, Sam Altman says so. But if they try it and say, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I would have written. Like I told you about the radiology report. It was essentially identical. Then at some point you start to trust that, as long as, and this is the point that Susan made earlier, as long as you have that relationship with the patient. That's the hard part. And you have to then be available to take care, see the patient with the understanding it's not going to happen very often. I'll tell you, it's interesting. Early in my career, I did thousands of surgeries, and I gave every patient my home phone. How many people do you think called me at home in 10 years? 2. And they both had real problems. Now imagine what it communicated to everyone else. That is what we're talking about. It's a confidence that you gain because when you're being made to go faster and faster, run that treadmill more quicker and quicker, you get defensive. And I think some of the mistakes we made of clinicians selling their practices to hospitals, and then all of a sudden having how they provide that care being told to them by an administrator, that's really problematic. And it's happening more. And private equity is going to be even worse. So now we're looking at an alternative, and I'm just hoping. That's why I come on shows like your own. I will have keynoted 50 conferences this year. I want people to start trying it, to start thinking about it. I want medical schools to start teaching it, not how to use it. The incoming medical students know more about it than professors. But how do you improve the health? How do you avoid heart disease? How do you identify heart failure earlier? How do you make obscure diagnoses? We could get on the list of opportunities that are there, and they all align with why people choose medicine for their profession.
Talking about education, Dr. Perl, my father is a small village doctor. His brain was, his MRI, his CT scan, he has to diagnose, clinical diagnosis. Is a village. We don't have anything, a stethoscope and a penicillin injection. But now the medical education, it's not changed much. The education is still not teaching these interdisciplinary fields like physics and mathematics, quantum sensors, and all these new fields are coming up. Do you think there is a flaw in the educational system, in the medical education?
I think that the medical education has to change. But it's always taught of the last generation, because your professors are the ones who were trained 20 years ago, and they're going to tell you whatever it was that they learned at the time. They're not going to be looking ahead, and I think that change has to happen. But what would be fascinating as an experiment for your dad is, maybe, 20 years ago, I was trying to explain to people what the internet would do. And I came across a great experiment. Remember, the internet didn't yet really exist very much. And someone took a computer and brought it into a small rural village. And in this rural village, they grew soybeans. And they always were surprised when they brought them to the marketplace. Sometimes they were, 10% more costly, and sometimes they were 5% less. And they could never quite figure this out. And he just gave them the computer. He said, play with it. And they discovered this place called the Chicago Mercantile site.
Futures.
Understood what soybean futures look like, and they gained 20% more. I am confident that if your dad took a computer and had access to generative AI and let the people in the community do it, he would see that they could become a lot healthier. I think we need to do that in rural areas. I think we need to do that in inner city areas. And across time, I think that's just going to be the way that we obtain medical information, medical expertise, and medical care.
And to that point, I'm sorry, Ramana, I'm saying, education has to be fun. Education doesn't have to be top down. It just has to be fun, and it has to be accessible. And you just have to give a few examples, and less is more. In our education, Dr. Pearl's education, Ramana, your education and mine, we've studied to the top of our game, but the world doesn't speak that language. So, we have to present things, which is part of the reason why I'm here. It's like, what can we say, meat and potatoes, to share this fantastic gift? I mean, to take soybeans from a bucket, to the futures market, it's a big deal, and it's fun. That's fun.
Yeah, that's fun.
Getting back to Ramana's question around all of this, if you trained 5 years ago, you had to memorize everything, because you'd have to otherwise carry a 50-pound backpack in order to be able to get all the information that you needed. It's now sitting in your pocket. It's sitting on your phone. You have more expertise there than every library of a medical school had for their entire history.
Amazing.
We just have to figure out how to use that tool, and it goes wherever we are, whenever we want to access it, whether we're making rounds, whether we're in the office, whether we're talking on an advice center, it doesn't matter. We have these tools available to us. Now I think it's a question of translating potential into practice.
My
Agreed.
father would have been ecstatic about it. Actually, he was always a vivacious reader. He was reading all the magazines from England and Russia and then United States. I think that even now, even the villages in India and Africa, that still works. If we give a remote patient monitoring kit, for example, all the basic kits to these village doctors, you can transform the healthcare system around the globe. Do you think that is AI? With the AI help, it can progress into the next level? Do you agree?
It's so exciting to me. I mean, I wrote in the past about how Alexa could do this kind of thing. Now it's happening. I wrote about taking the smart high school students. In Africa, a lot of people don't go to college just because they can't afford it. And so you'd have someone who's graduating, they're really, really smart. And I said, we should give them a 6-month training program and give them 20 medications and a certain number of diseases. Yes, they may only be 95% accurate, but today they're only 15% accurate. And now they have that tool. And I had to figure out how I could make available to them telemedicine and a clinician in case they were stumped. Now they have that tool that is there. Yeah, I think it should completely change the curriculum of how we provide care. One of my good friends is a surgeon from India named Devi Shetty. He, by the way, was the personal physician to Mother Teresa. So he's a pretty famous guy. He runs heart hospitals that are sitting there. And what he does is, rather than putting people through a nursing program where in the first year or so, you're basically learning all the physiology and all the other parts, he basically puts them in the OR immediately. He's going to train them to do 6 operations. And by the time they're done, he says, I want a 5-0 suture. And they said, no, you want a 6-0. They know exactly what he wants better than he does because they have this level of expertise. We can do the same, I think, with the generative AI tools that exist. We need to completely change how we train people, not based upon the superior nature of their memory, but their ability to use the tools and then work with people to be able to help them, like Susan's mom, to be able to have a comfort with it, to know how you get help, how to put information in place, how you create those menus. These are skills that we can help people get, not using the tool. That's easy, but understanding how do you prompt it? How do you follow up on the questions? How do you enter into information? And the beauty of all this is that it's doubling in power every year. 5 years from now, it's going to be 32 times more powerful. A year ago when I wrote the book, you couldn't enter data with voice. You had to type it into place. Now you just dictated it into place, sitting there. You couldn't put an image in place. Now you can do exactly that. We're talking about an entire different way of providing medical care, one that is going to be accessible not just to people who have trained for years in nursing school or medical school, but to all Americans to improve their health.
Yes, for sure. And as well, not only the medical care, but the medical education, the nursing education, all health professional education can be shortened, concise, and really move us forward on that same mission easily.
Another area I want to talk with you about is Dr. Susan Davis. She is a champion for the emergency CPR training. The people need we live in communities. People need to be trained on the CPR, cardiac resuscitation. The schools, the families at home, and all we have we have a national strategy about it? And then AI, can any participate in this area, help people like Susan to grow in globally and then nationally and globally, a kind of a strategy there to really save these the cardiac diseases, sudden cardiac deaths?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a strategy sitting in place right now, but I could imagine how it could happen. I mean, I think it's probably better taught with someone like Susan there to help figure it out, with a dummy that's there that you can actually make sure the compressions are working and make sure they go through all the steps sitting in play. The time to learn CPR is not when you have to resuscitate someone. It's in advance of that. But I also imagine that you could actually prepare people for coming to the course. So before they come to the course, they've already used the tool to learn about all the opportunities to figure out how to do it. So the first half hour, you're not overwhelming them with information. You can actually now just have them start demonstrating the skill. That again is what we're talking about. How do we accelerate the delivery of care? How do we accelerate being sure that the outcomes are as good as we need? How do we control chronic disease? Not just simply tell people what they should be doing, but actually see it in a better blood glucose or a better blood pressure or fewer visits to the ER for asthma or fewer admissions to the ICU for heart failure. That to me is the opportunity. And it didn't exist until 2 years ago, and it exists today.
So this is the same as an emergency response plan. This is the emergency response plan. It's recognize, call, and act. And it's the same whether it's your education or whether it's your living life, in healthcare. So it's the same thing, Ramana. So, what we do upstream is will always serve everybody for our outcomes. And so it's such a facilitator regardless. But, all of healthcare begins with education. So CPR doesn't matter whether it's, surgery on your face, or what was your example? It was a really cool example you gave earlier. You were taking, it was an ear surgery. Yeah. So
pneumothorax.
Yeah. I mean, what? So everything's applicable. The further we get upstream with this, the better, and it's more applicable. But if we're going to quicken and shorten and make better our decision-making processes in the healthcare setting, it only makes sense that we'll do the same in the education that leads up to that, because the education not only is in the medical need, the nursing need, it's in the use of these tools.
So Ramana started this show by talking about the crisis in medicine. And that is the equivalent of a disaster sitting in a community.
Mm.
And to the extent that I think this is really one of the key questions. Is medicine in crisis the way that Ramana has said? I think so. You think so, Susan? You obviously think so. The question to the listeners and viewers is to answer that. Because if it is in crisis, the response can't be, there's nothing we can do. The buildings are burning. We got to do something. If it's not in crisis, well, okay, then maybe we don't have to do as much. But if it is in crisis, what are we going to do? And I have yet to see an alternative. People say, well, maybe the government should run it. That's not going to solve the problem if the costs keep going up. Well, maybe just doctors and nurses should do it. That's not going to solve the problem if they can't manage the entire totality of the stream and be able to meet the needs of patients. I don't see an alternative. Now, will it succeed? You never know. I think so, but I can't prove it. But my challenge to viewers and listeners is, give me an alternative that you really think has a better chance, because I have yet to find it. And I wrote about it in my first 2 books, by the way. It wasn't that I didn't come up with ideas around integration and capitation and technology and leadership. It's that there was not this tool to be able to translate that into action, because you'd have to have so many human beings constantly on the phone with patients. It just didn't make any economic sense. That's why we had this iron triangle. And now we have the tool, inexpensive, available 24/7, filled with expertise. Yes, it needs to improve, and fewer hallucinations and privacy and security. I'm aware of those pieces. But when I start looking for how are we going to solve it, that's the horse that I'm going to bet on.
So Dr. Pearl, I'm a physics student of physics. So I am going to ask you, somewhere in the physics, one problem is a black box problem. That is not solved. We don't know what that is, emergent property. People can use this AI to the wrong purposes, or we don't even know what the outcomes are to some extent. So what do you think that, how do we manage that aspect of it? Some people who are, including Elon Musk, say with the doomsday thing they're proposing. What do you think about that? We need to slow down the AI progress. What do you say to those kind of naysayers?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that I'm much more afraid of the people than I am the technology. And and I don't think you can regulate it for two reasons. One, you have the black box thing. We don't really understand how it works. But more significant than that, when you're doing a narrow AI and you have two data sets, you can look at the data. You can say, is it representative? How biased is it? There's a lot of ways you can examine the data. The generative AI tool isn't trained on data. It's trained on everything on the internet, every medical textbook, every journal article, soon to be trained on every talk given at a conference. And number two, it's all dependent upon the person entering the information. So if you look how the FDA approves medical devices right now, they expect the device to give the same answer every time you use it. And the answer is, yeah, if you use it exactly the same every time, it would give the same answer. But Susan's going to put different information than I am. I'm going to put different information than you are. Everyone is going to do that. Why? Because we want to personalize it. And now we're in a situation where we can't predict it. If I had to give you a way to regulate it, I would do a blind test. And by the way, it's been done. Stanford just did that. They took the generative AI tool, they took clinicians, and they took clinicians with the AI tool. The AI tool, the generative AI tool, is 10% better than the clinicians alone and 12% better than the clinicians using a computer. Now, why? Why would it go down? Because the human brain has confirmation bias. The human brain has a lot of ways that we distort data. And so I would just do these head-to-head comparisons. And when the technology was 10% better than humans, I would authorize its use if I was an FDA commissioner, which I'm not.
Gosh. And that's so crazy because often there's decision support built in and the AI will pop up the answer. And then the human's like, yeah, And then they go back and you're like, no, but bing. And it's telling you again, bing, bing, bing. Here's the answer. And the human's like, I had a really bad morning and I'm not in the mood for you. To the AI, which is showing you the answer. So to your point, then the human weighs in with all of their morning issues.
Thank you, sir. We can talk with you for hours. You're full of wisdom. You really, one of the greatest thing about your call is that crisp thinking. Your analytical thinking is, I'm a fan of that analytical thinking. You write with the crisp writing. You write with the pragmatic solutions. You do that. That's why I'm a great fan of you. You're truly an asset and treasure for the country, treasure for any healthcare system. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Susan. You added an excellent dimension for the MedBreaks. Always you're one of the best things happened for the MedBreaks. Thank you. Welcome to the MedBreaks.
And if people want any more information, my website's robertpearlmd.com. They can go there, and there's links to an unlimited number of areas and articles and ideas. And I always welcome their feedback. I always learn far more, and every teacher knows that. Your students teach you more, patients teach me more than I'm able to tell them. So I encourage everyone to go there and see what they think. Let us know. And I want to thank you and Susan for hosting this. Your viewers and listeners learn a lot, I'm sure, from every program. And this is what we need. Education is going to be the key to the future, and the time has come to maximize that. Thank you for your podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Pearl. You have a new groupie here. Thank you, Ramana.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Truly an honor.
Thank you.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBreaks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.